hip hop, one of the core things about hip hop has always been taking something and making something out of it. You know, like without regarding how gangster the source material was. I don't think James Brown was sitting there making the big payback like, yo, this is gangster, I can't wait for everybody to sample this. He wasn't sitting there doing Mind Power like, I can't wait for D-Nice to rhyme on this 20 years from now. He wasn't doing that. He was making what he felt like making. We adapted it to what we did. And I feel like that can apply to a lot of different, that can apply to anything. You know, jazz musicians weren't sitting there saying, I can't wait for Primo to chop this up, you know, on a Gangstar interlude. They were just making what they were making. So it's really, you know, you can say you don't like the song. If you don't like the song, then you're more entitled to your opinion. However, I also feel that, like, you know, if you're gonna have an intelligent opinion, have it be informed and be able to back it up, you know, with some kind of reasoning. And just because the song was so wild, because of what it was associated with, I knew there was gonna be some heat for it. It was kind of similar to when I flipped the yodeling techno record for T.I. You know, at first people were like, oh, I can't believe he did that, but it was like, all right, but is it hot? Well, yeah, okay then. You know, at the end of the day, that's all that really matters. You know, Paper Trail sold a ton of records. Obviously, Recovery sold a ton of records, not just off the strength of No Love, right, but, you know, collectively, just over the body of work that it was. So it's just like, sometimes I like taking the unexpected and just making, you know, something hot out of it. You know, same thing kind of like with the Rick James, Super Freak, Kingdom Come. That was more so, it wasn't intended to be a Jay-Z record, it was originally intended to be my MySpace theme. Because I wanted to have a beat on my MySpace that played. So I was like, what's the silliest thing I can take and chop up? And then I had the Rick James 12-inch sitting there and I was like, oh, Super Freak, awesome. You know, and as soon as I laid it, I think Peter Guns is the only person who has the footage of me making this beat. Like, from me taking it out and putting it all over the pad. He just happened to be there with Corey that day. And as soon as I laid it out in the pads, I was like, oh, wait a minute. And it just all came together like in 30 seconds.
Can you actually, that's actually a good transition as far as like, usually when we do the Academy, we have music available, or, you know, the guys might be, you know, in the studio with people. Mm-hmm. But, you know, as best as you can without having access to, you know, your laptop and whatnot. Can you explain your process as far as chopping things? When you hear Super Freak, since that's a song pretty much everybody here knows,
right,
what are you listening for? What part are you trying to isolate in your mind and say, well, I can make this go here and this go there?
It depends. It depends on a few things. It depends on what I'm using, because the way that I sample, like see it in the MP, is different from how I'm sampling in Logic. And I'll get into that in a second. But I think a lot of times it's just, it's actually hard to explain because it's just in my brain. Sorry. Yeah, it's just, it's like asking me how I know how to walk to a certain degree. I don't know, I just know that my legs do this when I want to go that way. But I can say, like, sometimes certain things will stand out. Like, I think in that record in particular, it was the burn. And when I was thinking about that, I was like, wait a minute, that's actually kind of a, if you remove the context of it, just that bass line, that drop is kind of ill. Like, so, you know, and then I started listening to the record and I started hearing that there were a lot of little intricate hits in the record if you really got past the fact that it's Super Freak and Can't Touch This. You know, sometimes you just have to listen for certain tones. Certain hits, and if you're using the vocals, sometimes the cadence on the vocal, you know, and you gotta remove whatever the record is from the cadence, you know, from your mind. Like with No Love, you know, we all know that M's been through a lot of stuff over the years. He's had his ups and he's had his downs. He's had issues with his wife and his mother, and, you know, he's been through a lot. So I'm just sitting there, I'm removing the Night of the Roxbury thing from my brain for a minute, and I'm just saying, the dude is singing, love, what is love, don't hurt me no more. All right, hold on a minute. That's actually a real thing right there. Like, that's actually a real emotion that everybody can probably identify with. How do we take this and make it apply to something? And then as I'm sitting there chopping it up, I'm like, wait a minute, love, love, love. I don't need you no more. You Can't Hurt Me No More, wait a minute, we can make this work. It was kind of the same approach with Super Freak from a musical standpoint, whereas in the No Love record, I just heard the words and the emotion that can be invoked by those. In Super Freak, I just heard really hard minor chord stabs. And then it was just a matter of being able to take them and rearrange them to something that wasn't, you know, like that. So physically, a lot of times my approach to chopping a record when I'm using NMP is to take it and just go through the record, find the parts that I think sound good, whether they be stabs or, you know, runs or whatever, and just taking each one of them and, all right, this 2-second piece, put that on this pad, this 2-second piece, put that on that pad. And then kind of, after I'm done, sit there and just play with the pads until I find something that I like. And I'm kind of making it in my head as I'm putting these chops on these pads. With Logic, you're dealing with something different where I could take that same approach and take each part of the record that I find and you know, record it in the Logic individually. But one of the things that one of the workflows that I've developed in that in regards to using my laptop is that it's easier for me to take 40 records one night and have my assistant dump them into the computer, and then I can take them wherever I want to do, wherever I go, and work on them. So in that aspect, what I'll do is I'll listen to the record, and I demonstrated this on a YouTube video once where Logic kind of has a chop function built in that you can use the slash key to rhythmically just chop things. Whenever you hit this button, it chops the audio file. So what I'll do when I'm listening to records in the computer is I'll just sit there and say, all right, I like this part, chop, 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 chop. And when that's all done, I can just take all those audio files, drag them into the EXS sampler, and then kind of take the same approach, hit the pads until you find something you like.
Playing them almost.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess, you know, with all the different people you've worked with, I'm kind of curious to know, just, you know, if we just sort of like throw out some names, what is sort of the first thing that comes to mind as far as that process of working with them?
Oh man.
All right.
Okay.
So, Eminem.
Respect. I say that because obviously there was a certain respect level when we met, otherwise we wouldn't have ever met. You know, because and there was a point where every rap record he liked that was coming out, I did, which is why he called me, or why he, you know, made the request, because he had a respect for what I was doing at the time, and obviously, you know, I respect him as one of the greatest lyricists ever. So we already had a certain level of respect just meeting for the first time, in that was, you know, in that capacity, artist to producer, but it's still brand new. He's a creature of habit. He's only worked with Dr. Dre and a few other dudes his entire, you know, major career. So, you know, you're still filling each other out. And there was one point where we were working on this one record, which isn't on the album, but it was a story record. It was the very first thing we ever did. And I felt like he didn't nail it for a couple of reasons, in one particular verse. Actually, no, there was that, and then and it was also the direction of the record, whereas I felt it should have been a story about one thing, he was doing something else. So I'm like, all right, I'm taking a huge risk here, but I'm about to tell him that I don't like what he did, that I don't like the approach and the flow of this particular verse. I could be sabotaging myself right now because this dude's like the biggest artist in the world, but you didn't hire me to make a beat, you hired me to produce a record. So, you know, and it's harder with somebody you don't know. Like if it's Jay or anybody, you know, or Sai or something like that, I can just be like, yo, that's not it. I don't know if I can do that with this guy because I don't know him. You know, so I just kind of came out and said it like, yeah, you know, that second verse, your flow's a little off. It's like a little too ahead of the beat, I think it was, or something like that. And he just kind of looked at me like, what? And I was like, yeah, you know, it's like in this particular part where you say this, it sounds, you know, I gave him my criticism. And he just kind of looked at me like, yo, I don't hear it, dog. And I was like, I'm in trouble. you know, and I kind of just, I didn't force it. I kind of just, you know, said, well, this is why I'm thinking in terms of this. Gave him my criticism and my opinion on that, and he was just like, yeah, I don't really hear it. And I was like, yeah. So he didn't say much to me for the rest of the night. He left. And then I'm still at his spot. He went to the crib. I don't think he even said goodbye. I think he just kind of broke out. And I'm still at the spot, and I'm like, I don't know if we're watching TV or talking to something. And you know, one of his people comes over to me, hands me a phone, and I'm like, who's this? They're like, it's Marshall. I'm like, oh, okay. Big phone, like, what's up? He's like, dude, you're an alien. I'm like, what? He's like, you're an alien. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I hear it now. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you know, the second verse, I hear it, I get what you're saying. And I'm like, oh, all right, yeah. So he's like, no, I get it. He's like, you know, he was like, so what I'm gonna do is, he's like, I thought about what you said, I hear why you said what you're saying, and I'm gonna flip the concept of the record too. And I'm like, you know, and I was like, all right, cool. You know, he's like, yo, thank you. He's like, listen, in my whole career, for the most part, nobody's ever really done that. You know, he said, Dre, like when Dre first brought me around, he would give me his input, but he got to a point where, you know, he would just be like, yo, just go in and do you. You know, and he's like, it's been years since somebody's offered me any kind of constructive criticism, so I appreciate that, I respect that, and thank you. You know, and from that point on, that's when I knew we were good. So that's why I said the first thing that comes to mind is respect, because there was a certain line of respect there just in terms of I'm Just Blaze, you're Eminem. But then it really went a little bit deeper and was more solidified when I actually took that risk and gave him my opinion, and you know, he actually was, you know, respected me for doing that.
Kanye.
Evolution. You know, I remember walking into Soundtrack Studios to do a session with Busta, and I want to say Ye was damn near in tears out of frustration. He was still living in Chicago at the time, and he was just like, yo, like, I can't do this anymore. I gotta get out of Chicago. Like, I feel like I'm stifled. You know, but he didn't have, at the time, he didn't really have the funds or the money like that to just jump and make the move. You know, but which is why he used to have to be back and forth and sending CDs. You know, at the time we weren't even really doing MP3s back and forth like that. It was FedEx Hip Hop or FedEx GSCD. You know, and you know, he just spent one night we were on the phone for like 2 hours, just you know, venting his frustration. He was actually gonna come, like, just sleep on my couch for a while. Like, if you wanna, you know, do that, you know. Then I think we had made a plan to do that, and then he ended up getting a little money up, sold the beat or something, was able to come get that crib out in Jersey where he was living at in Newark or Hoboken or whatever. But you know, it was so to just see that, and like, I want to say around that same time, he like, this is when he still had the cornrows. So like, I remember him coming, when Jay hit him one night, like, yo, you gotta come track this beat ASAP. He had to come the next day. He didn't have time to get his cornrows done, so he just had the crazy blowout. Like, just, with this cowskin jacket on, and you know, he looked like he was a Chicago dude, you know what I mean? Like, so those are some of my earliest memories of him, from when me and him first connected and got cool and became friends. So to see that, which really wasn't that long ago, you really think about it, that was what, 2002? 2001, 2002? To see that jump, to then me hanging out with him in the W when he was living in LA, when he had that car crash, and him playing his album, and we'd be in the hotel room, and he'd be playing it for everybody that would listen. And you know, girls would just be sitting in the room like, yeah. So we going to PF Chang's or what? You know? And to the point where he played me Hey Mama, and I was